Hello and welcome to CrewConnect TV. We're here with John Adams, our chairman. John, thank you so much for being here.
Good to be here.
So John, we are celebrating 20 years at CrewConnect Global, and the industry in that time has transformed massively. Can you tell us about these transformations, and were they unexpected for you?
Well, I think there's a number of things that when we had this first conference, it was actually in 1995. They didn't have them each year, so it's not quite, it's over 20 years. It's 23 years since the inception. But 95 was an extremely interesting year because that was the year there was, they call them the 95 amendments to the 1978 STCW convention. I know that's very detailed, but that's very crucial in our industry. It was a big focus for the industry and a specific focus for the Philippine manning industry. And there was a lot of talk then in 95 as to whether the Philippines would make it onto the so-called IMO whitelist. Now, as I say, that's 23 years ago, and we're still having these discussions today. So it's still, as I say, a recurring theme through all of the conferences we've had over those years. Back then, we were also introducing what we called the ISM code, the IMO International Safety Management Code, which was a new piece of legislation which again the industry was preparing for at that time. Now we take it very much for granted. And another couple of things going on then was who would pay for training. And that led to another thought, which is, when I look back at it, I think it was a more reactive industry then, more of a supply-demand focus. And traditional in that sense, and an industry preparing for progressive changes ahead, and that's what we've been facing over the last 20 years.
So what were the biggest challenges and maybe the most exciting developments that happened in this 20 years?
I think there's a number of things. I mean, I think a lot of good things were done around STCW, a more serious approach to training. I would say that a few things that have changed significantly over the 20 years. One is certainly there's a more professional training and development process in place, generally a high standard across the industry. And one thing that sticks in my mind as a sort of watershed moment is that in 2008, which you could also take as a sort of midpoint in these conferences, the financial downturn of 2008, during that time, most of the training commitment was maintained largely across the industry, rather than what would have been a traditional financial knee-jerk reaction to cancel training first, or trying to cancel training costs first. So I feel that was an indication as some sort of growing maturity in the industry. I think that other things that have developed since that time, which I think is a key success, is a greater focus on what we may call human element or human factors, the recognition that safety is the number one priority, and a focus on developing a safety culture and making sure that we're bringing our people home safely to their families and loved ones. And there's a whole part of the industry devoted to that. That, and I must say the fact that not just marine HR practitioners, but technical departments, academics, trainers, researchers, consultants, they've all raised the bar in people management and processes, and there's a much more professional approach to it across the industry. That's what I think is crucially changed. That plus the fact that there's an evolving perceptiveness of our seafarers who have higher expectations, not just the pay. They want to know what are the environmental credentials, and indeed how well do we support the ships, and that's just as it should be.
Since we're celebrating 20 years, I think we're trying to look towards the next 20 years, really. And I know that it's always hard to sort of look into the crystal ball and predict the future, but what do you think the most monumental changes will be in the next 20 years?
Well, I think there's a number of things, but one thing I would say, just to close off something else that I've mentioned, is that I've talked about STCW. One thing that needs to happen is, for the Philippines, it has to become a non-issue, not something that comes up every couple of years as an issue we have to deal with. is such a fundamental thing. And if we don't get that out the way, then we will not be able to progress other more important parts of the agenda. And those things in the agenda, a lot of it will be down to, we hear a lot of these phrases of digital disruption, digitization. We have to really see what does that really mean, and we had some discussion on it today, quite a focused discussion on how do you prioritize that and draw up strategy for it. How do you make sure you're actually making a difference, creating enhancements and making improvements? So there's got to be a return on efficiency as well as a return on investment. So that's a key area. And another couple of buzzwords you'll hear is autonomous shipping. And I think that's probably a longer way off than some people think, but there'll be phases of it as we automate more and more of the processes, and then we have to think and really plan for what will the impact of that be on our seafarers and the quality and quantity of seafarers we require going forward.
John, thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Thank you. Thank you.